I call this meeting of the Sebastian Budget Review Advisory Committee to order for Monday, August the 3rd, 2020. Let's all stand and have a Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's have a roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. Lewin?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Napier?
Here.
Ms. Serta?
Here.
Mr. Hoffman?
Here.
Mr. Herlihy?
Here on Zoom.
All right. Welcome in, Ed.
Hello there.
Okay,
Mr.
the next thing on the agenda is approval of minutes for the meeting of July 20th. Has everybody had a chance to review those? I'll accept the motion for approval.
Second.
Have a motion made by Mr. Lewin and seconded by Amber Serta to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Presentation and approval of the third quarter financial report by Ken Kilgore, the CFO for the city. Ken, you're on.
Thank you.
Up.
So this is the third quarter report that I'll be reporting to the City Council on August 26th. As you know, we generally have it run by the Budget Committee first, and hopefully if you see anything that looks askew or have any comments, those can be passed on to the City Council at that time. We include the resolution that adopts any changes that we've made to the budget during the quarter that need approval by the City Council. We had one item from the use of the R&R fund. We also report the adjustments that the city manager made during the quarter. You can see there were a limited number this quarter, a couple of additional revenue receipts that we allocated those funds. We adjusted for the incentive awards that were given for the second quarter. And we had a couple of items where we're adjusting between projects, both in the Rec Impact Fee Fund and the CRA and Local Option Gas Tax Fund. On the summary of the funds, first for the page on General Fund, it was pointed out to me that I had a mistake in the narrative right at the top of the page on the third line. Rather than 52%, I think that was a leftover from the previous draft that I had done. But it's actually 74% of departmental funds have been spent as of June 30th. And you'll see that 72.2% of revenues have been received. Over to the right, I show a forecast of the general fund balance. And just so you know, this ties as far as the projected numbers I use for additional revenues I would expect between the June 30th and the end of the fiscal year and the amount of expenditures. These tie to the budget projection sheets that we used in the draft budget for 2021. So you can see I'm projecting a balance of almost 4.8 million. Slightly below the 5 million target, but considering the circumstances, I'm thinking we'd be doing well to go into the next year with that balance. I've got nothing new to report on the hurricane reimbursements. It still remains about $140,000 due on Hurricane Matthew. On the next page, I show the Stormwater Fund and the three enterprise funds. I can state to you that the stormwater fund and the building funds are actually above the projections that we expected to have by the end of this fiscal year. The golf course and airport fund will probably come in a little bit less than we originally projected for this year, but not substantial enough to throw off any of our financial planning, and we did include these estimates, as I said, in our projections for next year. We provide all the detail about each fund and each department in the city. I don't go into those in any great detail. When you come to the report that shows the status of capital projects, I usually like to point out that the balance that we have in capital projects as of June 30th is about $7 million. If you look towards the bottom of the page, you can see the 4 or 5 major unexpended items. A big part of that is because of the Public Works Facilities Compound project that's yet to get underway, and some stormwater funds that haven't been expended, as well as the Stonecrop drainage project that's kind of pending on grant receipts, and the septic to sewer program. On the following page, I show the investments that the city holds. We have the 3 major deposits, one being just a regular bank account at Seacoast National Bank, the State Board of Administration, and then not to be forgotten is the Florida Trust. On the bank account, we got a return for the quarter of 0.43%. It was a state board. We got 0.57%, but we knocked it out of the park really on the Florida Trust deposit, which was 6.22% for that quarter. There again, you've got a bit of longer term investments in there, because they do invest up to 2 years as an average, so they benefited some by the market movements. In the past, I don't think I've done this, but in this report to you, I reported also at the bottom of that page the interfund loans, so you can clearly see what transactions we've had over the years and how we are addressing that in the budget. By the end of this year, you can see the balance, and then I remark on what action will be taken in next year's budget to be paying those down. The balance of the quarterly report are the accomplishments that the various departments reported to me, and I consolidated into one overall report. So hope that information's helpful. I'd be glad to respond to any questions you might have on the quarterly.
We'll start with you, Gil. You got any questions?
Just one question. The unassigned reserves that we were targeting at $5 million at year end is not going to be $5 million. It's going to be $4.8 million.
Yes.
Is there any chance? Is there any chance of recovering or reestablishing that $5 million number, or are we targeting a new lower number?
We're kind of targeting the lower number at this point, unless something positive happens as far as revenue collections that we haven't yet anticipated. But in next year's budget, we will be doing well just to keep that $4.8 million. It all depends on how, if we have any additional allocations, unexpected costs that occur, or, like I say, any additional revenues. But pretty much we're kind of living with that 4.8 for right now.
Is there any minimum number that we would be comfortable with? It was $5 million previously, now we're saying 4.8. Is there any bottom line number.
Yes, and the 5 million is kind of a number that stuck over the years as being a safe amount. I did do an analytical study that if we had a certain degree of damages that used that, because of hurricanes that paid that reserve down, then I projected a timing of when we would get FEMA reimbursements or insurance reimbursements and when we could hopefully replenish it. But the only way to replenish those things that aren't reimbursable in some fashion is to allocate or expect to have more revenues coming in future years than we budget to spend. So,
and if I may, Ken, also,
difficult.
if I may also, so that 5 million, we don't think about it just in storm debris or storm coverage. We also have to look at our unfunded liabilities, retirements, payouts for leave. Those types of things are also captured in those reserves. If we have a long-term employee that decides tomorrow to retire, and we have to pay out all of those funds and leave, that has to come out of that reserve. It's an unfunded. So our reserves also cover some of those costs, those unfunded liabilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but it seems that as we lower that number, our risk becomes greater.
Well, the only way you raise it is to increase revenues. And the only way you increase revenues is either find some way for the revenue shares from the state that has dropped 37% to get that number back up, or you have to raise revenues through taxes or special assessments to offset general fund expenditures. You're welcome.
Bruce?
Okay, good evening. Okay, following up on what Gil has just discussed. So my analysis from reading is we lost about $427,000 in the first 3 quarters. Is that?
That would be accurate, because of the reduction.
Yeah, that's how the reserves have dropped. Well, then let me just follow on. Then you're projecting. Then in the right-hand schedule, you're looking at revenues to be almost $3 million, which follows the budget for the last quarter of this current year, 2020, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And I attribute our shortfall in the first 3 to really the intergovernmental revenues.
You're right on point, and the biggest part of that was the one source, the state revenue sharing
The
portion.
state revenue stream has just stopped.
That's the one Paul mentioned that really hurt us.
I mean, the franchise fees and utility taxes, although they're down a bit, that's uncertain as to when those show up, right? They don't flow evenly over a certain period of time, right?
There are a couple of them that we at year end we would accrue an additional month because we've already received the collections for that month, but we didn't actually get the deposit until into the new fiscal year. So there could be a month short as far as having at the end of June 9 full months of collections.
Well, we still haven't gotten any information from the state, right? That'll be later this month when they...
It should be sometime this month, yes, sir.
I wish I had the magic formula to give you for the intergovernmental revenues, but it's not going to happen.
Pretty much at the mercy of what happens with the virus.
Yeah, well, that would just lead me to believe that maybe our projections for next year's budget are a little optimistic then, but like you said, let's wait and see what the state tells us before we begin to overreact to that. Hey Ken, is there any way we have the $800 and some thousand that is assigned out of the general revenue surplus?
Mm-hmm.
Is there somewhere we could annotate that, what makes up that $800,000 somewhere, and just present that at some time?
Yes, I certainly can. I calculate those numbers, and it's based on,
I assume, yeah,
I can show
assume
the
you've got that
calculation.
somewhere annotated. It just would be helpful.
The year-end shows up in the audit report, right? The breakdown of those numbers is in your audit report?
In general terms.
Yeah.
I think what Bruce is looking for is more detail than that, but I can provide that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Bruce. Amber?
No, my questions were asked and answered. Thank you, Bruce.
Okay. Harry?
Just a couple small items. The school resource officers, the contract, is that we get paid on an annual basis, or is it, have you got it set up by quarterly, or?
It's
Because
set
I
up,
noticed that you're saying here the
it's set up by their quarters, I guess.
quarterly.
Their session, or their, I'm not sure what the right terminology
It's
is.
based on their school session and what they, and so their time is now August through May when their school is, and they'll divide that up into equal payments through that, in quarterly payments based on that time frame. And then the rest of the time, we utilize those for other duties in the city. That's why it's a 50-50 cost share.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I see that because of COVID-19, the deputies were reassigned to patrol duties, and I'm not sure how that, we used to do that at the sheriff's office. I'm pretty sure that we came up with an annual contract regardless of how much time they spent there, so I didn't know if there was a way that...
It is an annual contract. It's 50% cost share.
But according to this, it looks like there was no payment for this quarter because of the COVID-19.
Well, they weren't in school. They'll pay it during their school term. They'll make those payments. So they won't make any payments when the officer's not there. They make their payments when the officer's there. Is my understanding.
But that's what I was trying to get at, because that's not the way that I had it set up when I was with the sheriff's office. It was an annual amount regardless of whether they were there patrolling or out doing traffic, whatever. So anyhow, I didn't know if that could be looked at. I know it's small dollars, but also another small item would be the where is it, false alarm. How are we doing our collections on the false alarms? I know that the last quarter it was looked at like most of them were just warnings, but didn't look like there were many actual fines that were issued or collected. Are we in that collection stage now, or still mostly warnings?
Well, it's officer's discretion based on the number of times that the first time's usually always a warning, so it depends on how repeated the offender is.
Yeah, I just don't have that information in front of me. I don't know if we have a lot of them that have already had their third warning and now liable for making payments. I know it's small dollars, but those are some of the things that I was curious about. Other than that, everything else I'm pretty satisfied myself with, so that's all I had.
Okay. Ed, you want to come in through Zoom with any comments you have? Turn your sound on. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you. There you go.
Okay. Slip back to cancel. Follow up on something that Bruce brought up, and it's a concern that I have. It's revenue for next year. If you look at some of the things that have happened recently, and you consider what's going on with the virus here in Florida, first look at the national GDP, which dropped 32% in the last reporting quarter. What that's saying is the revenue is going to go down. later we're going to have a discussion whether we're going to have a meeting in the end of August, and I think, you know, I'm certainly going to recommend it, because if Ken gets the state estimate for next year, and it's horrible, then it's something that the committee's got to look at as far as the budget's concerned and where we're going to go with it. So that's just my thoughts on the thing, but I do have a big concern about revenue. That's it.
Thanks, Ed. Actually, I'm pleasantly surprised that it's not worse than it is with everything that's going down. It's, I don't think it's really that bad. By the time you get your September accrual in there at the end of the fiscal year and roll that stuff in, I don't think we're not gonna be that bad. Maybe $300,000. You can live with that. Make that up next year in a good year, right, Paul?
Your lips to God's ears, I hope.
Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Report on the fiscal year 2021 budget process by Ken Kilgore, CFO. Ken, you're on again.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure the committee was aware the City Council did authorize and approve the 3.1514 millage for the proposed millage. So that'll go on the tax notices.
Doesn't mean you're going to levy it, it means that's what they adopted for the trim notice, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Far as revenue projections, I've not seen enough significant difference in the assumptions I made at this point to change anything. There again, by the end of this month, maybe a few more clues as far as any information from the state. We haven't initiated labor negotiations at this point. At this point, I think we're waiting for the party to let us know when they want to sit down with us. The presentation to the City Council of the full budget will be on August 26th, because keep in mind they've only actually acted on the proposed millage. They haven't really approved the operating budgets for the various funds. The first public hearing, this date is different than the original budget calendar I set out. We are scheduling it for September 14th. The other date that I had presumed was to be the school board's date was taken by the school board. So I had no choice but to go to the option of September 14th. And the last item I wanted to mention is because of the uncertainty, hopefully it will be enlightened on before the end of this month. I thought the committee might want to consider an August 31st meeting to take a final look at the budget before the first hearing starts with the City Council, and just make sure of what your, how you feel about the budget as a whole, and where we are, what staff is recommending to the City Council.
We had one more scheduled after this anyway on the, didn't we have one more scheduled after August 3rd?
No, for some reason, there wasn't anything on the original calendar past this date.
While you're looking that up, Ken, so I want to mention that Ken went through the tax roll and the new items, and so we didn't feel there was enough discrepancy to ruffle feathers down at the Wesley Davis's office, the tax
property appraiser.
So we didn't. It was pretty accurate from what Ken was able to decipher from that, just in case you were wondering. But we did look at it closely.
Well, if we do meet again on the 31st, that would maybe you'll have the state estimates, but I'm sure your estimates are probably closer than theirs are. They usually
that's
are.
Always a qualifier I throw out. I mean, a lot of people or a lot of other agencies use whatever the state gives them as their estimate.
Yeah, I never did. I always use my own.
But I'm closer to home, I think.
Theirs were better.
And I see the money coming in every month, so I have some kind of basis
so you pretty
for
well know what
our base is. So.
Well, if we have another meeting on the 31st, I mean, I really don't have any objection to that. because that would give us a chance to, make a recommendation to the city council. If it's gonna look like it's $300,000 or $400,000 short, we could recommend they roll up and actually adopt the 3.1514, which would give you an extra $300-some thousand, which would, that certainly allays my concerns. And we could always make that recommendation, because they won't actually approve that first one until the 14th of September now, right?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay. Amber, what about a meeting on the 31st?
Yeah, that works for me.
Harry?
I don't see the need for it myself. The council has already gone with the proposed 3.1514.
Remember, that's just for trim adoption, though. That's not
That's true, but
the budget's funded on a lesser number.
that's, well, if they go with that amount, then there leaves some room for some labor negotiations and so forth. And the public hearing on the 14th, nothing's going to change on the 14th. It's going to be cast in cement on the 26th of August. So personally, I don't see a need for it.
Okay. Gil? Well, it might not be changing it, but we might be changing our recommendation, because our recommendation was to use the 3.1514 for the trim notice, and to use the 2.9399 as the operating amount, which is what's in the budget. We may need to make a recommendation to use the 3.1514 in the budget.
So we're not going to be changing the budget, we're just going to be changing the recommendation.
Well, that would change the budget, because
But we're not going to actually physically change the budget?
Yeah, you put more revenue in it.
If we elect to do, if
Yes,
comes in, okay.
if we do that.
So then what would be the downside to meeting? There wouldn't be any.
Well, or you could recommend cutting expenses.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
if I may,
that's
we
the
don't,
only other option, to raise revenue or cut expenses. I mean, I don't know what else you do, or dig into reserves again.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
So therefore, we
That's-
should meet on the 31st, just to,
I would imagine it wouldn't be a long meeting, and we'll know a lot more about the revenue by then. I'm sure the state will have the estimates out by then. They usually have them out in July, but it's been kind of a crazy year.
But we also
Okay.
need to look at what changes the direction the council may tell us to go in the budget, that you all may want to have a comment on
Right,
as well, not just the millage rate. There may be other items that the council
Right.
may want us to look at,
Right.
that you all may want to consider
Right.
before we move the budget to final adoption and public hearing.
before
That's
they
just
go
a
to their first
suggestion.
public hearing.
Correct, sir.
Okay. Bruce?
Excuse me, Mr. Napier, this
Yes.
is Janet, the recorder. Did we need to have a motion on the section before this where it says presentation and approval of third quarter? Does there
Well,
need
yeah,
a
we'll get
motion
to
for
that. We're not off the item yet. We'll get to that. You mean recommend a third quarter report to the city council? Yeah, we'll get to that.
Right after the approval of the minutes, the next section says presentation and approval of third quarter financial report. And I didn't know whether you needed a motion there.
Well, it's consensus. We usually do it by consensus, but we can do a motion. It's not, my position is if we don't object to anything, we've given consensus to approve it and pass it on to the city council, but we'll make it formal. Bruce, you got any comments? We'll get to that as soon as we finish this meeting, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, by the way.
I don't have a problem with meeting on the 31st.
Okay. Ed?
I'm all for it.
Okay, it seems, and I'm for it too, because it couldn't hurt any. So I guess the consensus is the committee that we will hold that meeting. Now, I don't think I really need a motion. I'll just take a consensus. Is everybody okay with the quarterly financial report? Signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. So,
Mr.
there you go,
Mr.
it's
Chairman.
unanimous.
Thank
Before-
You voted yes, right, Ed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And we will have the meeting
Mr.
on the
Chairman,
31st. We'll
before
add
we
that
move
into
on this item,
What?
before we move on from this item, the next meeting, The 31st, is there any way that we could meet prior to the 26th?
No.
I squeeze this date out of the calendar that we have, coordinated with the city clerk's office. The other dates between this chamber being reserved for the early voting and other scheduled meetings.
I would imagine that's the
31st
only
was the
date
only
you could fit
option.
it in there.
It was the only option I had.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only concern is that we're meeting after the presentation to the council. Okay.
Well, that is a workshop presentation. They wouldn't necessarily be voting on the
Right.
August 26th meeting, but hopefully we'll get some indications from them, where they stand based on their questions.
Now, any other comments by any committee members?
Yeah, I have a question.
Shoot.
Ken, the 26th meeting, you said it's a workshop. Does that mean it starts at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock?
No, it's actually at a regular city council meeting, but the agenda item will just be the presentation.
Okay, so it's at the
So
6 o'clock hour. Okay.
It'll be on the agenda. It'll be a item on the agenda specifically.
Okay.
We do this every year around August.
Right.
We kind of give them a chance to delve into any details about the budget, so.
Is that it? Next item on the agenda is general discussion by committee members. Ed, you got anything else you want to discuss? I'll go to you first.
I'm all set.
Thank you. Amber?
All set, thank you.
Harry?
I just want to say that the millage at 3.1514, I think that gives the city council the opportunity to make up any shortfall that we may see in the fund balance and or any labor negotiations that may have to be carried on.
Gil?
I'm good.
Bruce? Good. And I'm good too. I think I think you guys have done an excellent job considering what everybody's gone through for this year. And I'm surprised that GDP only went down 32% when they locked everything down and then locked it down again. It's a wonder it didn't fall down more than 70%, because they shut down almost everything. They put a lock on the whole economy for over 90 days. I'm surprised it wasn't worse. Any comments by staff? Ken?
I've
Paul?
got nothing to add tonight.
I'm good.
Any comments from the public? I notice we have some visitors back here. Yes. Sir, would you come forth to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening. My name is Ken McDonough. I am a detective with the police department. I am the PBA representative for Sebastian, and I thought I'd like Mr. Carlisle, Mr. Kilgore, and the board. We're here just to represent the department. We only have 3, but I decided because of COVID that maybe we should just limit the amount of guys. Multiple would like to be here, but we just thought that we would have Mark Mason, who's a detective with us, and school resource officer Daly is with us. And we just wanted to address the board, know that right now, unprecedented times between what's happening in the country, the state, and unfortunately even here in our own city, that we're just here to represent ourselves, to let everybody know that we've been here from the beginning to help everyone. But also, we just want to be part of the solution and move forward. And I just thought that if we could just represent ourselves and let you know that we're here for anything that I just said, especially moving forward and helping out, with everything that's going to take place from now, with the budget or with everything that's going on with COVID and just the city in general, that we are here to help like we always are. And I just thought maybe would show up and let you guys know that that's what we're thinking. And
Well, we appreciate your attendance. Since you're here, have you all looked at the budget? Have you looked at the tentative budget, the departmental budget?
Yeah, we are.
Would you like to make any comments on it?
Well,
That's okay, isn't it, Paul?
No.
Yeah, maybe you better not. I shouldn't have asked.
No, I mean,
It's too early for that, and
It's, we're gonna get together and
I
talk
assume the
about it.
chief went over this with Ken and you before it got to
yeah,
this
and
point.
we work well with the
Right.
crew.
We
in there.
do, and I just thought that because things are a lot different this year than in the past, that we would just show that we're here to, you know, represent ourselves and also.
Well, we appreciate you coming.
Be, like, again, like, just help, and that's what we want to do, so, and that's what we want to do, so.
Thank you
All
for
right,
your
thank you.
comments. Any other comments for the good of the order? This meeting is adjourned.